Chicago was strangely silent that rainy night. Inside Harrington Memorial Hospital, the storm rattled the glass walls and whispered through the barren corridors. There was something in the air. Strange. Claire Donovan shouldn't have been there. A mop in one hand, access badge in the other. Just another call for cleaning in a ward marked restricted. She moved quickly. Silent. Invisible, as always. Until she saw a flash drive. Forgotten. Still warm from someone's hand. She picked it up. And in that moment, already exhausted and invisible, Claire had no idea she was holding a secret worth millions. She had no idea it belonged to a billionaire doctor with a dead wife and a past built on silence. She had no idea it would change everything. The hospital never truly slept. It only changed its breathing. At 3:17 in the morning, Harrington Memorial existed in a state of artificial twilight, fluorescent lights humming softly, machines beeping in distant rooms, polished floors reflecting ghosts of people who had passed through hours earlier and would never notice who cleaned up after them. Outside, Chicago was soaked in cold rain, the kind that seeped into bones and made the city feel heavier, more unforgiving. Inside, the air was too clean, too controlled, smelling faintly of disinfectant and something metallic Claire Donovan had long ago stopped noticing. She pushed her cart down the corridor with practiced silence. Claire had learned how to be invisible. At 28, she moved like someone who understood the cost of being seen in the wrong places. Her scrubs, issued, faded, a size too big, marked her as a maid, a servant of the system rather than a part of it, an employee whose name no one bothered to learn. She worked the graveyard shift because it paid a little more, because the night didn't ask questions, because it allowed her to be somewhere else during the day when her father needed her. Michael Donovan's face hovered in her mind as it always did during the quiet hours. Pale. Thinner every month, his hands swollen from dialysis, veins bruised and tired. Advanced renal failure, the doctor had said once, like it was a technical inconvenience instead of a life sentence. He needed a transplant. He needed time. Both were luxuries they did not have. Claire swallowed and kept moving. Her body ached in familiar ways. Feet sore, shoulders tight. A dull pressure behind her eyes from too little sleep and too many calculations. Rent, utilities, medication, transportation, food. Hope always came last, if there was room for it at all. She was a poor girl from the South Side who had learned early that belief didn't pay bills, and faith didn't keep the lights on. She reached the administrative wing just as thunder rolled overhead, low and distant, rattling the glass walls that separated power from patients. This area was usually off-limits during her shift, but a spill had been reported earlier, something about a burst coffee cup left behind by someone important enough not to clean after themselves. Claire parked her cart and glanced at the door. Restricted access. She hesitated only a second before swiping the temporary badge issued to night staff. The lock clicked open with a sound that felt louder than it should have. Inside, the space was immaculate, executive immaculate. No clutter, no personal items. Everything arranged to project order and authority. Large desks, leather chairs, framed awards lining the walls, names she recognized from hospital press releases and fundraising galas she'd only seen on local news. The storm outside intensified, rain streaking down the tall windows like tears the building refused to acknowledge. Claire worked quickly, efficiently. She wiped down the desk, cleaned the spill near the edge of a polished table, careful not to disturb anything else. That was when she saw it. A small black object, half hidden beneath a folder. She froze. Her heart skipped, then stumbled into a faster rhythm. Slowly, she reached out and pulled it free. A USB drive, no label, no markings, just smooth plastic and quiet weight in her palm. Claire knew better than to touch things that didn't belong to her. She knew better than to stand in rooms like this, holding objects that could get her fired, dismissed, or worse. The hospital had ways of making people disappear without ever admitting fault. She had seen colleagues humiliated, embarrassed, escorted out by security, after being wrongfully accused of things they didn't do. Her fingers tightened around the drive. She could put it back. Pretend she hadn't seen it. Walk away. But someone would come looking for it. Someone powerful. Someone who would not care that she was just a cleaner working nights to keep her father alive. Someone who might decide it was safer to blame the invisible girl than admit a mistake. The thought made her chest tighten. Claire slipped the drive into her pocket. Not to steal it, not to open it. She didn't even consider plugging it into a computer. That kind of curiosity was a risk she could not afford. No, this was about control, about ensuring she could return it directly, intact, without intermediaries who might twist the story. Still, as she finished cleaning and exited the office, a familiar fear crept in. The feeling of being exposed, vulnerable, standing too close to something sharp. Thunder cracked again, closer now. She resumed her rounds, but the weight of the drive felt heavier with every step. An hour later, she stood at the reception desk of hospital administration, fingers interlaced tightly as she waited for someone, anyone, to acknowledge her presence. The woman behind the desk barely glanced up. "Yes." "I found something," Claire said quietly. "In one of the offices upstairs. I think it belongs to someone important." The woman's eyes sharpened. "What kind of something?" Claire hesitated, then reached into her pocket and placed the USB drive on the counter. The temperature in the room changed. The receptionist's expression shifted from boredom to calculation. She picked up the drive, turned it over once, then looked back at Claire with something colder in her gaze. "Where exactly did you find this?" "In an admin office. I was assigned to clean a spill." "You shouldn't have been in there." "I had clearance." A pause. The woman's jaw tightened. "You didn't look at it?" "No." Another pause, longer this time. "Who else knows you have this?" "No one." The receptionist studied her for a moment, clearly weighing something. Then she slid the drive into a drawer and offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you. We'll take care of it." Relief should have followed. Instead, unease settled deeper. Claire nodded and turned to leave. "Wait," she stopped. "Name?" the woman asked. "Claire Donovan." The name was typed into a system Claire couldn't see, stored, filed away. "Go back to your shift," the receptionist said, "and don't discuss this with anyone." Claire walked away with her spine straight and her hands shaking. By the time her shift ended, dawn was threatening the edges of the sky, pale and reluctant. She rode the bus home through wet streets and flickering streetlights, exhaustion dragging at her bones. The city looked different at that hour, quieter, stripped of pretense, like it was confessing something it would later deny. Her father was awake when she arrived. He always was on dialysis days. "How was work?" Michael asked from his recliner, voice rough but gentle. "Fine," she lied, kneeling to kiss his forehead. "Same as always." She made coffee, helped him organize his medication, listened as he apologized, again, for being a burden. Each word cut deeper than the last. She wanted to tell him he was worth everything she gave up, every dream deferred, every night spent mopping floors while the rest of the city slept. But she said none of that. Later, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Claire couldn't stop thinking about the drive, about the receptionist's eyes, about the feeling that she had brushed against something dangerous without fully realizing it. She fell asleep, just as her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She ignored it. The phone buzzed again. Claire sighed and answered. "Hello?" "Claire Donovan." The voice was male, calm, controlled, accustomed to being obeyed. "Yes?" "This is Dr. William Harrington." Her breath caught. Even she knew the name. Everyone did. Doctor, surgeon, public face of Harrington Health Systems. The CEO in all but title. A rich man whose name was etched into buildings and scholarships and glossy brochures celebrating excellence and innovation. A billionaire, depending on which article you believed. Certainly a millionaire many times over. I was told you found something that belongs to me, he continued. Claire sat up slowly, heart pounding. I gave it to administration. Yes, and then I was told you're the one who found it. A pause. I'd like to speak with you, in person. Her throat went dry. I already returned it. I'm aware. Another pause, deliberate. This won't take long. She pictured her father asleep in the next room, the bills stacked on the counter, the thin line she walked every day between stability and collapse. I don't think that's necessary, she said carefully. Silence stretched. It is, William replied, not threatening, not kind, just certain. Please come to my office this evening, 7 p.m. Claire closed her eyes. This was how it started. This was how people like her ended up used, exploited, left behind when something went wrong. I didn't do anything wrong, she said. I know, he answered. That's why I want to meet you. The call ended before she could respond. Claire stared at her phone long after the screen went dark. She had done the right thing. She knew that. She hadn't opened the drive, hadn't copied it, hadn't tried to trade it for money or favors. She hadn't turned honesty into a deal or an arrangement. And yet, as the morning light filled her small apartment, unease settled in her chest like a warning, because doing the right thing didn't always mean being safe. And somewhere in the towering heart of the hospital, a powerful man was paying attention to a woman the system had trained itself not to see. If stories like this move you, where resilience meets the unexpected, don't forget to subscribe. There's more to unfold. Claire hesitated outside the executive wing, her reflection warping across the glass. She looked like someone who had wandered in from a different life, out of place, out of time. Her lavender scrubs had been traded for a borrowed button-down blouse and slacks from HR's emergency wardrobe, but nothing fit quite right. Her sleeves were too long, the fabric stiff, the shoes pinching. A costume of legitimacy. Nothing more. She wasn't supposed to be here. But Dr. William Harrington had summoned her. And when someone like him says your name out loud, people listen. She adjusted the strap of her bag over her shoulder and stepped into the hallway, the door sighing shut behind her. The floor was silent in a way that only power could afford. Thick carpet, low lighting, polished chrome, air too cold and too clean. Her steps barely made a sound, but she still felt like every eye behind every frosted glass wall turned toward her. Her name was on the appointment sheet. She checked. Still, the receptionist watched her like she might ask her to mop something. William's office was at the end of the corridor, large, glass-walled, with a corner view of the city and stormlight. She raised her hand to knock, but before her fingers touched the door, a voice called from within. "Come in." She did. The space was sharp, monochrome, designed to impress, clean lines, cold lighting, a shelf of medical journals perfectly aligned, degrees framed on the wall like silent bodyguards, and near the window, him, William Harrington. He stood with his back to her, arms folded behind him, a surgeon's posture even in stillness. Rain streaked down the glass behind him. The city below blurred. She waited. Eventually, he turned. The contrast hit her harder than expected. He looked tired, not weak, not vulnerable, but as if he'd been holding himself together for a long time with surgical precision, and something inside had begun to slip. Their eyes met. She didn't look away. "Ms. Donovan," he said. "Dr. Harrington." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. She sat without speaking. He sat too, slowly, like the weight of his name had settled heavier than usual. There was a pause. "You found my drive," he said. "I returned it. You didn't look inside." "I didn't need to." He studied her, and not politely. Not like a boss assessing an employee, like someone trying to solve a problem that refused to fit the usual mold. "You knew it had value," he said. "I knew it didn't belong to me. That's not how people usually think. I'm not most people. No, he said, voice quieter. You're not. He reached into a drawer and pulled out an envelope. Your father's name is Michael. Her spine stiffened. You looked him up? I had the right. He's a patient here. That doesn't mean you had permission. He nodded once. True, it doesn't. He slid the envelope across the desk. She didn't move. Inside is a letter of expedited authorization, he said. Nephrology, specialist consult, no cost, full diagnostic support. Claire stared at it like it might burn her fingers. You think I did this for that? She asked, voice brittle. I think you deserve something back. I didn't do it for a reward. Then take it as a sign of respect. Respect? She echoed. From a man who had me cleaning surgical floors last week? That landed. He blinked, sat back, exhaled slowly. That was never about you. I know, she said. That's the problem. Silence stretched. Rain tapped against the glass. Claire stood. I'm not taking it. Why? Because if you're only honest when someone gives you something, it's not integrity. It's leverage. She left the envelope on the desk. He watched her, not angry, not cold, almost impressed. You don't trust me, he said. I don't know you. What if I want to change that? She turned at the door, hand on the handle. You can't undo what brought me here, she said softly. But you can choose what you do next. And then she was gone. William sat alone in a room designed to make men feel untouchable. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel powerful. He felt seen. And he didn't know what to do with that. That night, Claire walked home instead of taking the bus. The city felt different, heavier, quieter, sharper around the edges. She couldn't shake the memory of his eyes. Not the color, but the weight. Like someone who had been carrying a secret so long, it had fused to his bones. And still, she didn't feel sorry for him. She felt responsible for what she knew now. Because returning the drive hadn't ended anything. It had started something neither of them could name. Claire wasn't supposed to be behind a desk. Not a glass one. Not on the 37th floor of a tower designed to keep people like her out. Not surrounded by walls that whispered wealth in every detail, the soft carpet, the filtered air, the silence of people who had forgotten how to raise their voices. But there she was. Her ID badge still bore the faded imprint of the night shift. Her blouse itched at the collar. Her shoes, loaners from HR, clicked too loud on the floor, announcing her in every corridor. She didn't belong here, and the people around her knew it. The first day, no one said much. The looks were enough. A blonde secretary glanced up from her desk with the faintest curve of her lips. Not a smile, but a question. Who let her in? Another assistant asked if Claire was shadowing someone from maintenance. Claire answered politely. She didn't flinch. She didn't shrink. But the weight of it stuck. She took notes. She watched everything. She learned the rhythm of the executive wing, where silence was currency and proximity to power meant survival. She answered phones, filed reports, double-checked calendars. Every task she completed was triple-checked by someone else. And still, no one told her why she had been placed there, no one but him. William didn't speak to her for the first 2 days. He passed her desk twice, once in the morning, once mid-afternoon, nodded, brief, measured. She caught his reflection in the glass as he entered his office, eyes scanning her as if to confirm she hadn't vanished. He wasn't avoiding her, he was observing, and that was somehow worse. By the 3rd day, the storm had lifted, but the sky still carried its bruises, thick clouds, low pressure, a city still shaking off the cold. Claire arrived early, earlier than anyone else. She needed the quiet. She needed space to breathe before the stairs returned. She made herself useful, reorganizing a forgotten supply drawer in the break room. She wasn't asked to. She just couldn't sit idle. That's when she heard them. Two women talking in the hallway outside, unaware she was inside. I heard she used to clean the OR wing. You're kidding. No, janitorial, night shift. Can you imagine? She must have seen something, or slept with someone. A sharp laugh. Please, she doesn't have the face for that. Claire froze, her hands wrapped around a box of tea bags. She didn't move, didn't breathe. The voices faded. The cold stayed. She didn't cry. She just kept working. Mid-morning, a delivery arrived with a stack of internal documents misrouted from an off-site location. Claire offered to scan and archive them. A simple enough task. A reason to stay out of sight. But as she worked, one folder caught her eye. Billing codes. She recognized the format. Her father's insurance had been a nightmare to navigate. She knew what normal looked like. This wasn't normal. One file showed a duplicate charge for a procedure that, by its own timestamp, had never happened. Another showed a series of adjustments under physician names she hadn't seen on the official staff list. It wasn't just clerical error. It was a pattern. Claire's fingers hovered over the mouse. Her throat tightened. She could hear her father's voice again, thanking the nurses, apologizing for needing help, saying he'd try to hold on a little longer. She closed the file, logged out, and sat there for a long time, hands resting on the desk, heart pounding quietly behind her ribs. She left early that day, told the front desk she had a migraine. No one questioned her. She didn't go home. Instead, she found herself in the hospital chapel again, small, dimly lit, tucked behind a hallway few ever noticed. The place smelled of old wood and silence. Candles burned on a side table, their flames steady despite the draft. She sat in the back pew. She didn't pray. She just breathed. Then she heard footsteps, not rushed, not clumsy, familiar in a way that made her chest tighten. William entered the chapel without looking around. He sat in the pew in front of her. Quiet. Back straight. Hands resting on his knees. Neither of them spoke. It was almost a full minute before he said, "You saw something." Not a question. She nodded, though he couldn't see her. "I wasn't supposed to," she said. "No," he replied softly. "But I knew you would." That surprised her. She leaned forward slightly. "Why?" He didn't turn. "Because this place isn't built to hide forever. It just hopes people are too tired to look closely." Claire closed her eyes. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You're trying to make me complicit." "No," he said quickly. "I'm trying to make you see what I see." She shook her head. "I don't want to be like you." "Then don't be." He turned, finally, and the look in his eyes wasn't the detached confidence of a CEO. It was grief. Controlled, contained, but there. "She trusted the system," he said, voice raw, "and it killed her." Claire didn't ask who. She already knew. "She believed in me," he continued, "and I failed her." She swallowed. "So now you want someone else to believe in you again?" "No," he said. "Now I want someone who'll tell me when I'm wrong." She exhaled. And in that moment, she understood something she hadn't before. He wasn't trying to protect the institution. He was trying to escape it. And maybe, just maybe, she was the only one who saw the difference. Claire didn't mean to find him there. It was late, the kind of late where most of the building had gone quiet, where lights dimmed automatically, and the executive floor began to exhale for the first time all day. She'd gone back for a misplaced patient file, a routine billing form, lost somewhere between the admin department and digital records. The door to the server room buzzed under her badge and opened with a low click. She stepped inside and stopped. William Harrington was already there, in his shirt sleeves, jacket gone, cuffs rolled, staring at a screen like it might confess something. Back to her, still tense. He turned when he heard the door. Claire froze. He didn't speak, didn't look surprised either. "I'll come back," she said quickly. No, he said. Stay, I was just finishing. She hesitated. The room wasn't large, no more than 10 steps long, maybe 4 across. Shelves of servers, a single console screen, a printer humming in the corner, no windows, no space to avoid someone. She stepped in. The door slid shut behind her. Automatic. Now they were alone, and close. He moved slightly to the side to give her access to the terminal. She brushed past him, careful not to touch. But the air changed. She could feel him behind her. Too still, too aware. His presence pressed against her spine like a thought she wasn't supposed to have. She clicked through the folders, pulled up the billing file, downloaded the copy. He didn't speak. Neither did she. Until... You're not sleeping, he said softly. She paused. What makes you think that? You've been wearing the same shoes all week. She turned to him slowly. That's a strange way to measure someone's exhaustion. It's the quiet ones that give the most away. Their eyes locked, and for a breath too long, the room forgot how to breathe. Claire felt her heart stutter, not because he was too close, but because he wasn't moving. He wasn't looking away, and neither was she. Why do you keep pulling me closer? She asked. His jaw shifted. I don't know, he said. Yes, you do. A long silence. Then finally, because when you're near, I remember what honesty feels like. Claire's breath caught. I'm not your redemption, she whispered. I know. Another pause. You shouldn't be in here, she said. He stepped back, finally, just one pace. I'm not. She turned toward the screen, blinking hard. He walked to the door and pressed the release. Before leaving, he looked back once. I'm trying, he said quietly. She didn't respond. She couldn't, because her pulse was still pounding in her throat. And what scared her wasn't the tension. It was how much of her wanted to step back into it. The apartment was dark when Claire got home. Not because no one was there, but because her father preferred it that way. The light hurt his eyes after dialysis. The television murmured at low volume, but he wasn't watching. Michael Donovan sat in his recliner, a blanket tucked up to his chest, hands still swollen from the day's treatment. His eyes were closed, but not asleep. Claire could always tell. She moved softly, setting her bag down, toeing off her shoes. You eat today? She asked. Half a sandwich, he murmured. She walked to the kitchen without a word, reheated soup, cut toast, brought it back on a tray. Michael opened one eye. You spoil me. I'm bossy, she corrected, setting the tray in his lap. It's different. He chuckled, a low, dry sound. Claire sat on the couch beside him. The city pulsed outside their window, neon flickering between broken blinds. Long day? He asked. She nodded. Still pushing papers for the suits? Something like that. Michael chewed slowly. Don't like the sound of that. She didn't answer. He looked at her more closely. What's going on, Claire Bear? She smiled at the nickname. It had followed her since she was 6. I'm just tired, she said. No, he replied, gentle but firm. Tired is in your shoulders. This... He tapped his chest. This is different. Claire looked at her hands, felt the heat of William's office again, the weight of knowing, the edge she was balancing on. I think I'm standing in a place I don't belong, she said finally. Michael leaned back. Then why are you there? She hesitated. Because maybe someone in that place isn't as untouchable as I thought. His eyes didn't move from hers. Do you trust him? Claire exhaled. I want to. That's not what I asked. No, she admitted. I don't. Not completely. He nodded once, slow. Good. That means your mother raised you right. Claire smiled, but her eyes were wet. He reached over and patted her knee, his hand trembling slightly. You've always seen people. Not just what they show, but who they are underneath. That's your gift. She swallowed. Sometimes I think it's a curse. He didn't argue. Instead, he said, "Promise me something. Anything. Don't trade your soul for mine." Claire blinked. "What?" "I know what you're thinking. What you'd give up to keep me going a little longer." His voice wavered, not from emotion, but exhaustion. "But I'm not worth your integrity. I'm proud of you because of who you are, not because of what you sacrifice." Claire looked away, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I can't lose you, Dad." "You won't," he said, "but don't lose you in the process." She took his hand, held it tightly. And in that moment she knew. Whatever happened next, whatever she discovered, she couldn't stay silent, even if it cost them everything. The office door was ajar. Claire hesitated at the threshold, hand hovering over the edge, uncertain. She hadn't meant to walk this way. She was just returning a file, one of many from the day's backlog. But now she stood before William's empty office, lights still on, a half-empty glass of water on the desk, the cursor blinking on his screen like it was waiting for her. She could have set the file down and left. She could have pretended she didn't see what was open. But something stopped her. A flicker of a folder name, visible from where she stood. Internal Investigations, protected. She stepped inside slowly, quiet as a breath held too long. The folder sat on the desktop, already open. The last file viewed still highlighted. She didn't sit, didn't breathe. She just clicked. A list unfolded. Invoices, incident reports. Internal communications flagged for deletion. Documents with timestamps erased. Surgical errors logged and then overridden. And then one line made her skin go cold. Case, Elise Harrington, suppressed. Claire's hand trembled. She clicked. The file opened. Black text, redactions, cold clinical language that tried, and failed, to hide the truth. A post-op complication. Delay in response. Nurse report ignored. Vital signs not properly recorded. Claire's eyes caught one line, near the end. Per executive request. Patient error flagged for deletion. No external review required. Her throat closed, not because she was shocked, but because part of her had already known. She backed away from the desk, the cursor still blinking behind her like a heartbeat out of rhythm. She left the file where it was. She left the light on. She walked out of that office feeling like the floor beneath her had vanished. She waited in the hallway. Didn't sit. Didn't pace. Just stood still, arms crossed tightly against her chest. The envelope from earlier pressed between her elbow and her ribs like a shield she didn't realize she was holding. He returned 10 minutes later. Coat damp from the rain, coffee in hand, expression neutral, until he saw her face. He stopped mid-step. "Claire," he said, voice low. Her name used to sound different coming from him, calmer, balanced. Now it felt sharp, exposed. She didn't speak. She just looked at him, long enough for understanding to dawn in his eyes. "You looked," he said. "I did." Silence. Heavy, unforgiving. "I had to." He set the coffee down gently on the windowsill. "I was going to tell you." "When?" she asked. "Before or after I helped you cover it up?" His eyes tightened. "That's not what But that's what it is, isn't it?" Her voice cracked. Not loud, not hysterical, but like something delicate snapping clean in half. "You brought me here because I didn't ask for anything, because I was quiet. Invisible." "That's not true." "No?" she asked. "You knew I'd find it eventually. And when I did, you knew I'd stay quiet, because I'd be afraid of what would happen to my father." William stepped forward. "I never used your father against you." "You didn't have to," she whispered. "You just left the door open." He flinched, barely, but she saw it. "You said you wanted someone to tell you when you were wrong," she said. "So here I am." A pause. "You're wrong." William swallowed hard. "I thought if I held it together long enough, If I fixed what I could behind the scenes, you were protecting yourself. I was protecting her memory. By burying her truth, that landed. He looked away. Claire stepped back, her breathing uneven now, like her ribs were refusing to hold her upright. I defended you, she said, almost to herself. I thought you were better than this. And I hate that part of me still wants to believe it. William's voice came softer now. I didn't know what else to do. You tell the truth, she said. You risk everything. You fall with it if you have to. Her voice broke. That's what love is. And suddenly he wasn't the man in the suit anymore. He was the man whose wife died under his watch, and who chose silence because the alternative meant losing everything else. She saw it in his eyes, in the regret, the fear, but she also saw the line he hadn't crossed, the one he still couldn't, and she couldn't be the one to drag him across it. She turned. He reached a hand out. Claire. She stopped, but didn't turn back. I came into this building invisible, she said, and for a second I thought maybe you saw me. A beat. Now I know. You were just looking for a mirror. She walked away. He didn't follow. The elevator was silent on the way down. Claire stood with her arms crossed, staring at her reflection in the doors. The woman she was when this began, and the one she had become now. Older, sharper, clearer. The next morning, she filed a report. Not anonymously, not cautiously. She used her full name, and when she hit send, her hands were shaking, but not from fear, from clarity, because now, whatever happened next, she could live with herself. And that was more than she could say for the man she left behind. If you're still here, feeling what she felt, this is the kind of story we tell, slow, aching, and real. Subscribe to stay with us till the end. The press conference was unannounced. No PR team, no prepared statement, no podium branded with the Harrington Health Systems logo. Just a single man. William stood alone behind the microphone, flanked by no one, the city skyline sharp behind the windows. His face was pale, his posture rigid. His voice, when it came, was steady, but the kind of steady that takes effort. I am here today to confirm that I knowingly withheld internal evidence of malpractice, billing fraud, and unethical administrative practices inside Harrington Health Systems. The room went still. I did so under the belief that protecting the institution would serve the greater good. I was wrong. A flurry of flashes, reporters leaning forward, phones lifted. He continued. I have submitted my resignation. Effective immediately. I do not expect forgiveness. I only hope that by telling the truth, those harmed by our silence can begin to heal. He looked directly into the camera. For the families who lost loved ones and never got answers, I was part of the reason. I can't undo what was done, but I won't hide anymore. And then he stepped down. Just like that. No applause, no spin, no damage control. The story broke within the hour. News tickers lit up. Headlines screamed betrayal, scandal, collapse. Social media erupted. Former employees came forward. A full investigation was launched. William's name fell hard, from CEO to cautionary tale. But Claire watched it all in silence. Not with triumph, with relief, because he had told the truth. And this time, he hadn't done it to save himself. The hospital changed, slowly, publicly. Executives were removed. Internal policies were overhauled. A new board was instated. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Claire received a call. It wasn't from William. It was from a physician she didn't know, head of nephrology, newly appointed. He informed her that Michael Donovan had been moved to a priority list. Not because of favors, because someone had finally acknowledged he never should have been at the bottom to begin with. The words caught in her throat. Your father's labs meet all the current eligibility requirements, the doctor explained gently. We'll begin re-evaluation this week. Claire pressed her hand to her mouth. He continued, not knowing she was crying on the other end. "We can't change the past, but we're going to try to do better," she whispered. "Thank you." Not because she owed them gratitude, but because she knew how many people had never even gotten this call. She didn't see William again, not during the fallout, not during the hearings, not when her father was admitted for pre-transplant evaluation, not when she sat in the waiting room for hours, clutching his file like a lifeline, not when the new attending placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and said, "We're ready when the donor is." Still, in the quiet of those nights, she thought of him, of what it had cost him, of the moment he had looked her in the eye and told the truth, not to be saved, but because he was finally ready to stop running. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it mattered. The city changed seasons. The rain gave way to wind. The streets grew louder again, the air sharper. Claire walked through it all with her chin high and her eyes open. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She had enrolled in night classes, administration, policy, healthcare ethics. She took the same bus, wore the same coat, lived in the same apartment. But she wasn't the same. She was rebuilding something, not just her life, her voice. And she carried it like armor now. The first snowfall came quietly. No dramatic gusts, no warning from the sky, just soft, steady flakes drifting through the cold air like the city had paused its breath. Claire watched from the window of the cafe as the flakes settled on the concrete, melting fast, like they weren't sure if they were allowed to stay. She wasn't waiting for anyone, not officially. She had come to meet a classmate from her hospital administration course, a quick coffee to talk about internship placements. But the classmate had cancelled last minute, and Claire had stayed anyway. Maybe because she liked the stillness. Maybe because something in her had hoped for an interruption. The bell above the door chimed. She didn't turn, not right away. But she felt it, a ripple in the air. That quiet shift when someone walks in carrying a piece of your past. She looked up. William Harrington. No suit, no coat of power. Just a dark sweater, jeans, snow in his hair. He looked older, softer. Like winter had come for him in more ways than one. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she gave the smallest nod, and he walked toward her. He stopped just short of the table, uncertainty flickering across his face. Something unfamiliar for a man who once walked through operating rooms and boardrooms like the air itself answered to him. "Hi," he said simply. Claire's voice was calm, steady. "Hi." A pause. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said. "I didn't expect to stay." Another pause. She gestured to the empty seat across from her. He took it. There were 2 coffees on the table. She slid the untouched one toward him. He raised a brow. "Hazelnut," she said. "Still your default?" He let out a quiet breath, half laugh, half disbelief. "You remembered?" She didn't answer, because of course she did. They sat in silence for a while, the world outside moving past them in snow and headlights. "I saw your name on the ethics board report," she said finally. "I didn't think you'd read it." "I did." She stirred her coffee slowly. "All of it." William nodded. "I meant every word." "I know." He looked out the window, watching the city blur. "I lost a lot." Claire tilted her head. "Did you expect to keep it?" He gave a short, breathless laugh. "No, I guess not." A beat. "But I gained something back. The truth, maybe, or just the ability to breathe again." Claire studied him. He looked lighter, but not healed. Scarred, but upright. The kind of man who had fallen, and chose to stand again, even if no one was watching. "You look different," she said. "So do you." She nodded. "I am." He didn't press, and maybe that's why she kept talking. "I enrolled full-time, healthcare ethics and nonprofit management. I'm working part-time in policy review." "That sounds like you," he said. "Like me?" He met her eyes. The version of you the hospital was never smart enough to see. She looked down. You disappeared, she said. I wanted to, he replied. But disappearing doesn't undo anything. So I started showing up again, just somewhere else. Another silence. She broke it softly. I thought I hated you. I know. I don't. William's jaw tightened. I hoped you wouldn't. A long breath passed between them. Then Claire said something she hadn't rehearsed. There's still a piece of me that wonders if I hadn't walked into that office that night. You would have walked into it eventually, he said. You were always going to see what others ignored. She smiled, barely. Still, it changed everything. He looked at her then. Really looked. And it was different this time. Not the way a man looks at a woman he wants to own, or save, or need. The way a man looks at someone who could destroy him, and instead chose to walk away. Claire. She met his gaze. He didn't reach for her hand, didn't lean in, didn't make a speech. He just said with quiet certainty, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know. But I would like a second chance. Not to fix the past, just to... He paused, searched for the right shape of it. Know who we are now. Claire didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at the snow outside. At the people rushing past the window. At the way winter demanded silence before it allowed beauty. Then she turned back to him. One condition, she said. Anything. No secrets. William nodded. No walls. No more looking through me, she added. I never did, he said quietly. That was the problem. I saw too much. A pause. I still do. She held his gaze, and didn't flinch this time. They left the cafe together an hour later. No hand-holding, no kiss, just footsteps side by side. The snow had started to stick now, on railings, on rooftops, on the edges of the sidewalk, like the city was learning how to be quiet again. He walked her to the train station without asking. She didn't stop him. They stood at the corner as the red light changed, headlights washing over them in waves of white and gold. Do you think, he asked, there's a version of us that started in a different world? Claire gave the smallest smile. Maybe. But we didn't meet there. No, she said. We met here. Another pause. Where it counts. He opened his mouth like he might say something more. But the train roared past above them, and she took a step back. Then she did something he didn't expect. She leaned in, not for a kiss, just enough for her voice to reach him through the cold. This isn't a beginning, she said. No? It's a continuation. He nodded once. I'll take that. And she turned and walked down the stairs. Not because she was leaving him, but because she knew he'd follow, eventually. And this time, he'd follow with no power to offer, no debts to pay, no guilt in the way, just two people who had every reason not to fall and still chose to try. Together, slow, real, and maybe, if they were brave enough, forever. The lights were low, the seats half filled, the echo of footsteps still lingering through the back rows. Claire stood at the front of the room, a soft blue light glowing from the presentation screen behind her. She wore no badge now, no uniform. Time had softened the urgency, but deepened the clarity. 6 months ago, she was cleaning rooms no one saw. Now she stood where every eye was on her, and none of it was borrowed. She adjusted the mic. Welcome, she said, her voice steady. Today's session is on institutional ethics and systemic accountability, but I'd like to begin somewhere else. A few pens clicked. One student typed. Claire paused. Not for effect, for breath. I want to talk about silence, she continued. The kind that sits between two people who know something's wrong and say nothing. Because silence doesn't always mean approval. Sometimes it means fear. Someone in the back shifted in their seat. Claire looked up for a moment, and that's when she saw him. 5th row, end of the aisle. William. No fanfare, no announcement. Just him. Quiet, focused, changed. He didn't smile, didn't wave. He didn't need to, because Claire didn't falter. She went on. Systems are built to survive. People sometimes are sacrificed to protect them. But real change doesn't start with policy. It starts with discomfort. It starts when one person says, "This isn't okay," and doesn't back down when no one else says it with them. Her hands weren't shaking. Not anymore. She clicked the slide. A quote appeared on the screen. Courage isn't loud. It's stubborn. Then she stepped away from the podium. No notes, no crutches, just her voice. Most of us are taught that the people in power always know what they're doing, but that's a myth. Power doesn't make you right. It makes you responsible. She scanned the room. Young faces, tired faces, skeptical ones, and one man watching her like he was seeing her for the first time all over again. I've stood in the quiet corridors of systems that didn't want to be questioned, she said. And I've been the one who didn't want to ask, because asking meant risking everything. Her eyes didn't leave his, but I asked anyway. The room held its breath, and I'd do it again. She ended the talk there. Not because she'd run out of things to say, but because the silence that followed meant they were listening. The students filed out slowly, murmuring thank yous, asking about readings and paper deadlines. Claire stayed behind, organizing notes that didn't need organizing. Then came footsteps she knew. William approached, slow, careful, not cautious, just respectful. I wasn't sure I should come, he said quietly. You didn't interrupt, she replied. He hesitated. You were extraordinary. Claire offered a small smile. I wasn't trying to be. That's exactly why you were. A pause. He looked at her hands on the table. Strong, sure. You're teaching now. I am. He nodded. They're lucky. Another silence. The kind that didn't ache. The kind that held possibility. I'm consulting for a small patient advocacy group now, he said. Non-profit. Very underfunded. No scandal yet, but I'm hopeful. Claire laughed softly. Low bar. Safer that way. She looked at him for a long moment. Then, I'm not who I was 6 months ago. I know, he said, and I'm not here to ask for who you were. She tilted her head. Then why are you here? His reply was simple. To see who you are now. And that was enough. He didn't ask for more. Didn't reach for her hand, didn't press for promises, just stood there, in her space, as an equal. A man who'd once held power like a weapon, now carrying it like a responsibility. And Claire, a woman who'd once been invisible, now stood where her voice echoed in every corner of the room. As he turned to go, she called softly, William. He stopped. She walked toward him, steps sure. When she reached him, she didn't speak. She just leaned in, barely, and touched her lips to his cheek. A breath, a thank you, a beginning. And when she pulled back, she said only, Don't disappear again. He met her eyes. I won't. Then he left. And Claire stood in the quiet, not waiting, just ready. She had once been the girl who cleaned empty rooms in silence. Now she filled them, with truth, with courage, with her own name. And whatever came next, she would never vanish again. Thank you for staying till the last word. If this story meant something to you, let it live on, by subscribing and sharing it forward.